Number 5. Mangal. Yeah, I know it's a bit of a shocker that someone I would consider Mangal this high in the list, but I've always had like this fun fascination with Mangal, with just a guy who's just, there is no world domination to him. There's more like, I just want to go out and fight people. That's my thing. And it's, I mean, yeah, in some incarnations he's been like wanting to dominate the world, but for the most part, Mangal has been this very, I just want to go out and beat the crap out of people, that kind of person. Just look for strong warriors to fight. And when seeing him whenever he and Superman fight, it's always fun. Mangal is a very straightforward guy. You know, there is no, like, redemption to him. There is no, like, sad story to him. He's like, nope, I just want to go out and fight. That's my whole thing. I just want to go out and fight people. And again, there has been some interesting things done with him, and it is cool. Like, again, it does stem from in my younger years watching animated Justice League and all that. But in the comics, I do find some really cool stuff that he was done with, especially like that Alan Moore story, the Justice League episode, what the Man Who Has Everything was based off of. I really enjoyed that story as well. The Alan Moore story itself, where Mangal played a huge part in it, like he did in the animated episode. And plus, it's just fun to see Mangal whenever he shows up, because the thing with Mangal is that he's so self-aware that what he's doing is evil, and it's so delightful just to hear some of his dialogue. He's like, I shall be the supreme battle master and whatnot, and it's just kind of fun listening to him talk, because he's such a throwback to a Silver Age era that it's hilarious. So, in that regard, I just really think Mangal's fun. That's why he's kind of high on the list. It's just that he's fun, and when watching him and Superman fight is great. And also, he is something that Superman has to, you know, he can't just go out and punch this guy, because this guy can match him blow for blow. Sometimes he just has to outthink Mangal and just out-strategize him. And plus, it's just cool. It was just always cool to see him and what he thinks of, because he's also a man of brain and brawn. So, again, that's why I kind of put him so high on the list for those reasons. Number 4. Bizarro. Yes, Bizarro. Now, you're probably wondering, why is Bizarro so high on this list? Because I really dig Bizarro. I think he's such a cool concept of a dark clone gone evil and done right clone saga. And there's also so many ways you can play off Bizarro. You can make him the sympathetic villain, you can make him like the Frankenstein monster, you could make him like just this straight-up evil clone, or some guy who just feels like he has to lash out. There's so many ways you can play Bizarro. I mean, he's been played in so many different terms, because writers just like to use him in so many different ways that it's become interesting. And plus, it's always cool to explore Bizarro World. I have always found Bizarro World such an interesting place, especially, you know, what Jeff Johns did, but especially more so with Grant Morrison did in All-Star Superman. And again, Bizarro, I just love how he talks. I just love Bizarro talk, because it's like, even when I'm trying to write Bizarro in a story, it's like, wait, me am confused. I will actually start getting confused on how Bizarro would speak, and it's always fun like that. It's always fun to listen to Bizarro talk, and again, he's a villain that you can go so many different directions with, because you could play the whole sympathetic creature kind of way, or you can go like, oh, he's pissed off at Superman because he feels like he's a copy and he's gonna go wreck shit. So, that's kind of the way I see Bizarro for the most part in that regard, is that he's a very versatile character. He's a very versatile villain. And I do consider him a villain because, again, it's kind of like when I was talking about Ice King, my Legends of Evil Spotlight. When Ice King kind of does something wrong, he has a sense that what he's doing is wrong, but he continues to do it anyway. So that's why I kind of consider him a villain for the most part. But Bizarro has just always been another favorite, just a cool character to me, and I just love going to Bizarro World. That's one of my favorite places in the DC universe to go see. Just Bizarro World in general and how that all works. Anyway, moving on. Number 3. Cyborg Superman. Yeah, I bet you guys weren't expecting him to be so high on the list. But yeah, the Cyborg Superman. The Cyborg Superman was actually one of the first Superman villains. When I started reading comics outside of, you know, watching the cartoons, when I started watching, reading the comics, Cyborg Superman was one of the first Superman villains, and comic book villains in general, that I hadn't seen in cartoons in comics. Like, that was so cool to see this new character. He's got all of he's a cybernetic version of Superman. And yeah, I know he's become more of a Green Lantern villain, but at his core, he is a Superman villain through and through. But other than that, like I was saying with Mangal, I love how, like, and I'm talking about early Cyborg Superman, where Cyborg Superman, he was so delightfully self-aware that he was evil. It's kind of like when reading Dark Beast. Like, it's kind of like that with Cyborg Superman. He's very just so self-aware that he's evil, and some of his dialogue is just hilarious. And also, you gotta give credit when credit is due. He and Mangal destroyed Coast City, and then kicked off, you know, the whole Parallax story, you know, the whole Emerald Twilight story with Hal Jordan and Green Lantern, thus giving rise to Kyle Rayner. But other than that, the Cyborg Superman, I always thought he was cool that he was not only did he have the powers of Superman, but also that he had these cybernetic abilities that gave him an edge over Superman. So it was always cool to see Superman try to combat, you know, someone with powers like his own with a few extra gadgets. And again, yeah, I know he became more of a Green Lantern Corps villain, but we all know. We know where his roots come from. And yeah, I know he's coming back in the new 52. You know, there are a lot of reasons, you know, the 52 has kind of turned me off. And yeah, I was like, oh, that's a cool design. I'm not still going to read the Superman title for it, but whatever. Okay. But anywho, the pre-52 Cyborg Superman was so cool. I loved him in Sinestro Corps, and I loved what they did with him, making him the ruler of the Manhunters. There are just so many, when he came back with a vengeance. That's what I liked. He didn't feel like a throwaway to the 90s. That's what I liked about him, that he felt like when he came back and became relevant again, he became this very, you know, menacing character once again, like he was in the early comics. And it was so cool to see him be like, you know, fool everybody thinking that he's the real Superman, when really, and also his backstory is very tragic. I'm not going to go into full detail what his backstory is, but think the Fantastic Four origin if everything went horribly wrong. Just imagine that. That's in a nutshell. That's what, you know, that's what Cyborg Superman's origin is. But anyway, moving on. Number 2, Lex Luthor. Yeah, I was kind of I know a lot of you guys were kind of expecting Lex Luthor to be very high on this list, but yeah, and let me explain why. I really dig Lex Luthor, and yes, I know he's everywhere. When you think Superman, you think Lex Luthor. That's kind of the crutch to him. But however, what I like about Lex Luthor, and why I think he's so high on the list, is that in a weird kind of way, you see his point. You do see his point of why he hates Superman so much. Because when you think about it, here comes a guy that can do everything. He can, you know, he can stop storms. He's pretty much a god among men, and he wants to protect people. And, you know, in his eyes, it's like, well, humanity just stops, you know, they're just not going to be like, oh, Superman will clean it up, that's cool. And you can see Luthor's point of being like, well, when Superman came in, humans just gave up. That was kind of his thing. I mean, granted, he kind of took it to whole new extremes, but still, you kind of see his point of why he hates Superman, because he feels like he's stopped the human evolution. And plus, you know, what I like about him is that a lot of writers keep him very consistent. You know, they keep him in so many different levels. You can make him Lex Luthor the businessman, Lex Luthor the mad scientist, Lex Luthor anything. And what I like about Lex Luthor himself is that as a character on a whole, Lex is everything Superman isn't. You know, the big corporate bully, the corrupt politician, the mad scientist. He is, as Superman has said, he is the worst of humanity rolled into one person. And I always found that interesting. And what I also love about Lex Luthor is that this is a guy who just don't give a shit. I love when he's like when he's belittling other villains. Even when I remember one comic of Outsiders when the Joker is torturing Luthor. And Luthor is like, yeah, I don't care, you can torture me all you want. And it's so cool because there are other points where he's talking to villains, he's like, I'm Lex goddamn Luthor, fuck your shit. And I love that attitude to him. He's like, I can do whatever I want because I'm Lex goddamn Luthor. So, in that regard, there's also cool, and it's also cool to see how just a mere human can, you know, match wits with a guy who could, if he wanted to, crush his skull with not even, you know, an effort. So in that regard, and yeah, I know he's very you see him everywhere. You see him in the movies. You see him everywhere. Sorry for the background noise, but what I like about Luthor is that they keep him very dimensional in the in comics as well as movies. I mean, we've had so many great portrayals of Luthor. I mean, Gene Hackman, Michael Rosenbaum in Smallville, Kevin Spacey in Superman Returns. I don't think we're going to see Luthor in Man of Steel, but he's always been a character that you always find, you want to hate him. You don't, because he's so I feel like he's so popular. A lot of people just hate him that he's always just synonymous with Superman. But what I like is that writers have always managed to keep him so interesting, especially when I love when Grant Morrison wrote him in All-Star Superman, and he had that moment where he saw the world how Superman sees it, and he says, "I could have saved the world," and Superman replies with, "You could have saved it any time you wanted to." And that was such a great moment between Superman and Luthor, in my opinion. And I could go on and on about why I like Lex, but I think I've said enough, and you guys already know who my number one is. But anyway, here's my number one. Number one, Brainiac. Yes, Brainiac is my number one. I know a lot of you guys kind of saw it coming. I bet you a lot of people were like, is it going to be Lex Luthor or is it going to be Brainiac? Well, Brainiac, in my opinion, is one of the most scariest villains that ever came out of comics. Brainiac is he is pretty much as Lex Luthor is he represents all the evil in humanity. Brainiac represents the worst in alien in the alien world of aliens. Ugh, tongue-tied. But Brainiac has always been cool. He's always been this character who can mix brain and brawn against Superman and just keep being this onslaught. Let's not forget that he's responsible for destroying Krypton and then sealing all of Kandor in a bottle city and just keep it in his private collection. Not only that, Brainiac is a guy who's, universally feared. This is a guy who is just this onslaught of terror. And he has, he's not like a villain who's like, I'm going to destroy the world because I'm evil. Evil laugh. But it's more like he does it because he feels like he's logically obligated to destroy these beings and preserve them out of just the sake of, oh, well, it's out of science. It's totally cool. I'm above that. I'm above, morals and whatnot. I'm doing this out of science. And that's so scary that this is a guy, it's kind of like the Daleks where, he doesn't, Brainiac doesn't feel fear. He doesn't feel, compassion. He doesn't feel rage. Well, he does get angry a few times, but he's mostly driven like a machine. And that's his direct his prime directive is it's not because he wants to. It just feels like it's his logic. That's how he honestly should feel, that these races should be preserved after blowing them up, because he feels like, yeah, they'll evolve and then I'll do something with them. So, in that sense, it's always cool to see Brainiac, and it's always just almost terrifying to see Brainiac when he shows up, because when writers write him right, Brainiac can be one of the most terrifying villains in existence. When he shows up, everyone can be like, oh shit, it's Brainiac. And yeah, I know his name is kind of dull, but the character himself is terrifying. This is a guy who can just get into any computer, any form of technology, and manipulate it to his own. I mean, this guy, for the longest time, it wasn't until we found out in Superman Brainiac that all other incarnations of Brainiac were just probes. And the real Brainiac has just been hiding out in space, just chilling. So, in that regard, that's also another reason that he's just been, he's been screwing with Superman for so long, and even he was like, oh, you're Superman, okay, that's what it's like. For Superman is that he's never going to stop, he's never going to, let up, because he logically believes that, yeah, Superman, you should die. That's my logic. There's no hard feelings. I just think you should die. It's in my directive. So, having said that, that is, I have so many other reasons of why I like Brainiac as my number one Superman villain. And plus, this guy needs to be in a movie. I'm just calling it right now. This guy, Brainiac, needs to be in a fucking Superman movie very soon. I mean, we'll probably never see it. They'll probably use Luthor again, but Brainiac needs some love. But anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this list on a whole. Again, this is just my personal opinion. If you guys have a different opinion of who you think should be number one, or you have villains on here that you want to see, that's totally fine. It's just my personal list. If you have a list of your own, that's cool. I have nothing against you. This is just how I like these villains. And if you like them differently, or less or more, that's fine. But anyway, again, I hope you guys enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun. And, anywho, I think I've said my piece. I'm out.